The water shimmered like liquid silver in the first blush of dawn, and Eliza Morgan stripped down to her chemise without a moment's hesitation, desperate to wash away the dust and grief that had settled into her bones during 3 weeks of hard travel across the Texas plains. She had left everything behind in St. Louis after her father's death 6 months ago, sold the modest dry goods store he had built over 20 years, and used the money to buy passage on a wagon train heading west to San Antonio. At 22 years old, she had no family left, no suitors worth considering, and no reason to stay in a city that held nothing but memories of loss. The year was 1875, and Texas promised opportunity for those brave enough to seize it. Her father's sister, Aunt Margaret, had written from San Antonio about the growing town, the need for seamstresses and shop workers, the chance to start fresh where the past could not follow. The Red River curved through the landscape like a snake of molten copper in the early light, and Eliza waded in slowly, gasping as the cold water rose past her knees, then her thighs, soaking the thin cotton of her undergarment until it clung to her skin. She had risen before the others in the wagon trained specifically for this moment of privacy, needing to feel clean again, needing to feel something other than the numbness that had accompanied her since burying her father beside her mother in the St. Louis cemetery. She ducked beneath the surface, holding her breath as the water closed over her head, then emerged with a gasp, pushing wet auburn hair back from her face. The current tugged gently at her legs, inviting her deeper, and she obliged, swimming out toward the middle of the river with strong, sure strokes her father had taught her during summers at the lake outside the city. Cole Bennett had been riding since before first light, pushing his bay mare hard to reach the river before the sun climbed too high. He had been away from his ranch for nearly a week, delivering a herd of horses to Fort Worth, and the money in his saddlebag represented 6 months of breaking wild mustangs and gentling them for cavalry use. At 28, he had finally saved enough to pay off the loan on his land, 200 acres of good grazing country south of the Red River, and he was eager to get home to his small ranch house and the 2 hired hands who were managing things in his absence. But the mare needed water and rest, and so did he, so when he spotted the river gleaming in the distance, he turned toward it gratefully. He dismounted near a stand of cottonwood trees, loosening the cinch on his saddle and letting the horse drink her fill from the shallows. That was when he saw her. She was perhaps 50 yards upstream, moving through the water with a grace that made his breath catch. The rising sun painted her in shades of gold and rose, and for a moment Cole simply stood there, one hand still on his saddle, watching this vision that seemed too beautiful to be real. Her hair floated around her shoulders like dark silk, and when she dove beneath the surface and emerged again, he heard her laugh, a sound of pure joy that carried across the water. He knew he should look away, knew he was intruding on a private moment, but something held him transfixed. It had been so long since he had seen anyone take such simple pleasure in anything. Life on the frontier was hard, unforgiving, and joy was a rare commodity. This woman swam like she was free, like nothing could touch her, and Cole found himself envying that freedom even as he admired it. Eliza turned in the water, executing a lazy backstroke, and that was when she saw him. She froze, treading water, her heart suddenly pounding. A man stood on the shore beside a horse watching her. Even from this distance she could see he was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the dusty clothes of a working cowboy. For a moment panic seized her. She was alone, vulnerable, far from the wagon train camp where the others still slept, but he made no move toward her, did not call out or gesture. He simply stood there, and something in his stillness reassured her. She could swim to the opposite shore if needed, could get away if he proved to be a threat. Yet she found herself not wanting to flee. Instead, she called out, her voice carrying clearly in the still morning air. "It is rude to stare, sir." Cole felt heat rise to his face despite the cool morning. "My apologies, miss. I did not mean to intrude. My horse needed water." "Then water your horse," she called back, "but perhaps you could turn your back while I make my way to shore." He did so immediately, pivoting to face the trees, though every instinct urged him to look again, to confirm she was real and not some desert mirage conjured by exhaustion. He heard splashing, the sound of her moving through the shallows, and he kept his eyes fixed firmly on the cottonwood bark in front of him. "You can turn around now," she said after a few minutes, and when he did, she was standing near the water's edge, wrapped in a blanket she must have left there, her wet hair hanging in ropes down her back. She was watching him with a mixture of wariness and curiosity, her chin lifted in defiance even though he could see her hands trembling slightly where they clutched the blanket closed. "I truly am sorry," Cole said, removing his hat in a gesture of respect his mother had drilled into him long ago. "I have been riding for days and I suppose my manners got lost somewhere along the trail." Despite herself, Eliza smiled. There was something honest in his face in the way he stood there looking genuinely embarrassed, hat in hands, that put her at ease. "I suppose I should not have gone swimming alone in unfamiliar country. My father would have scolded me for being reckless." "Is your father nearby?" Cole asked, glancing around for signs of a camp or wagon. Her smile faded. "No, he passed away 6 months ago." "I am traveling with a wagon train, camped about half a mile back through those trees. I wanted to bathe before we continued on to San Antonio." "San Antonio," Cole repeated. "That is still several days' travel from here. You have family there, an aunt," Eliza confirmed. "She has offered me a place to stay while I establish myself. I plan to work as a seamstress." Cole nodded slowly. The sun was climbing higher now, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and in the growing light he could see her face more clearly. She had green eyes, he realized, the color of new grass after spring rain, and a scattering of freckles across her nose that suggested she had spent time in the sun despite efforts to protect her skin. She was beautiful, but more than that, she looked strong, capable, like someone who had weathered storms and emerged intact. "I should get back," Eliza said, though she found herself reluctant to leave. There was something about this cowboy that intrigued her. He had a kind face, weathered by sun and wind, and his eyes were a startling blue beneath the brim of his hat. When he smiled, which he did now, it transformed his features from merely handsome to genuinely warm. "Of course," Cole said. "Safe travels to you, miss." "Eliza," she said impulsively. "Eliza Morgan." "Cole Bennett," he replied, settling his hat back on his head. "It was a pleasure to meet you, Eliza Morgan, even under such unusual circumstances." She laughed, and the sound made something in his chest tighten. "Unusual indeed. Goodbye, Mr. Bennett." She turned to go, but Cole found himself speaking before he could think better of it. "Wait." She paused, looking back over her shoulder. "The river," he said. "It looks mighty inviting. Would you mind if I joined you? I have been riding hard for days and I could use a wash myself." Eliza knew she should say no, should hurry back to the safety of the wagon train, but something made her hesitate. Perhaps it was the loneliness that had been her constant companion since her father's death. Perhaps it was the way this stranger had respected her privacy, had turned away when asked, had treated her with courtesy despite the impropriety of the situation. Or perhaps it was simply that she was tired of being afraid, tired of letting caution rule every decision. "I suppose that would be all right," she said slowly, "though you must promise to behave like a gentleman." "You have my word," Cole said solemnly. He began unbuckling his gun belt, and Eliza quickly averted her eyes, keeping her back turned as she heard the rustle of clothing being removed. She heard the splash as he entered the water, and only then did she turn around. He had left his clothes in a neat pile beside his saddle and was wading out into the river, wearing only his undershorts, his muscled back and shoulders gleaming wet in the morning light. Eliza felt her face grow hot. She had never seen a man so undressed before, had certainly never been alone with one in such an intimate setting. Everything about this was improper, dangerous even, and yet she could not bring herself to leave. Cole dove beneath the surface, scrubbing at his hair and face, washing away the accumulated dust of the trail. When he came up, he found Eliza had waded back into the shallows, still wrapped in her blanket but standing ankle-deep in the current, watching him with those remarkable green eyes. "Tell me about your ranch," she said, and he realized she must be trying to establish normalcy, to make this strange situation feel less dangerous by filling it with ordinary conversation. "It is small," he said, swimming closer but maintaining a respectful distance. 200 acres along a creek about 30 miles south of here. I raise horses mostly, breaking mustangs for the army and for ranchers who need good working stock. I have 2 men who help me, Miguel and his son Carlos. They are good people, hard workers." "It sounds peaceful," Eliza said wistfully. "It can be," Cole agreed. "Though the work is never done, horses need constant attention and the land demands respect. But yes, there are moments of peace. Evenings when the sun sets and the horses are quiet in the pasture, nights when the stars are so bright you feel like you could reach up and touch them." "You love it," Eliza observed. "I do," Cole said simply. "It is mine. I built it from nothing, worked every day for 6 years to make it something real. That matters to me." Eliza understood that sentiment deeply. "My father built his store from nothing too. He came to St. Louis with only a few dollars and a lot of determination. By the time he died, he had a successful business and the respect of the community. He always said that what you built with your own hands could never be taken away, not really, because you would always know you had done it." "Your father was a wise man," Cole said gently. "He was," Eliza agreed, and her voice caught slightly. "I miss him every day." They were quiet for a moment, the only sound the gentle rush of the river and the morning songs of birds in the cottonwood trees. The sun was fully above the horizon now, warming the air, burning away the last traces of night's chill. "Why did you really come out here alone?" Cole asked. "You must have known it could be dangerous." Eliza considered the question, then decided on honesty. "Because I needed to feel something other than numb. Since my father died, I have been going through the motions of living without really feeling alive. The water, the cold, the freedom of swimming, it made me feel real again, even if just for a few minutes." Cole nodded slowly. "I understand that. After my parents died of fever 4 years ago, I threw myself into work until I could barely stand. I thought if I stayed busy enough, I would not have to feel the loss. It took me a long time to realize that grief does not disappear just because you ignore it. How did you move past it?" Eliza asked, genuinely wanting to know. "I am not sure I have entirely," Cole admitted, "but I learned to let the good memories exist alongside the pain. I let myself remember my mother's laugh and my father's terrible jokes, and yes, it hurt, but it also reminded me that I had been lucky to have them at all." Eliza felt tears prick at her eyes. "That is a beautiful way to look at it. My mother would have liked you," Cole said impulsively. "She always said the world needed more women who were not afraid to swim in rivers at dawn." Eliza laughed through her tears. "Did she say that often?" "Well, no," Cole admitted with a grin, "but I think she would have said it if she had met you." They talked for another half-hour, standing in the shallows as the morning grew warmer, sharing stories of their pasts and their hopes for the future. Cole learned that Eliza had always dreamed of opening her own dress shop, that she had a talent for design, and had made most of her own clothes since she was 14. Eliza learned that Cole had always wanted to raise horses, that as a boy he had been fascinated by the wild mustangs that roamed the plains, and that his greatest pride was in gentling a horse without breaking its spirit. Finally, reluctantly, Eliza said she truly had to return to the wagon train before someone came looking for her. Cole nodded understanding, turning his back once more while she climbed out of the river and dressed behind a screen of bushes. When she called that she was decent, he waded to shore as well, and they stood there awkwardly, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "Will you be all right?" Cole asked. "Traveling with the wagon train, I mean, are they good people?" "They seem to be," Eliza said. "The wagon master, mister." Crawford is stern but fair. The other families have been kind. Good, Cole said. That is good. Thank you, Eliza said softly. For this morning, for the conversation, I did not realize how much I needed to talk to someone who understood. I should be thanking you, Cole replied. You gave me something I did not even know I was missing. They stood there a moment longer, and Eliza felt a pull toward this man she had just met, this stranger who somehow felt less like a stranger with each passing moment. It was foolish, she knew. They would part ways now and never see each other again. She would continue to San Antonio, and he would return to his ranch, and this morning would become nothing more than a strange, sweet memory. Goodbye, Cole Bennett, she said finally. Goodbye, Eliza Morgan, he replied. She turned and walked into the trees, following the path back toward the wagon train camp, and she did not look back even though every instinct urged her to. Behind her, Cole stood watching until she disappeared from sight, then turned to his horse with a sigh. He saddled the mare efficiently, checked that his money was still secure in the saddlebag, and prepared to mount. Then he stopped. Something was pulling at him, a feeling he could not quite name. He thought of Eliza's laugh, of the way her eyes had lit up when she talked about her dreams of opening a dress shop. He thought of her courage in traveling alone to a new city, in swimming in unfamiliar waters, in speaking honestly to a stranger about grief and hope. He thought of how empty his ranch house would feel when he returned to it, how quiet the evenings would be with only Miguel and Carlos for company. He made his decision in an instant. He swung into the saddle and turned the mare's head toward the trees, following the path Eliza had taken. He caught up with her just as she reached the edge of the wagon train camp, where morning fires were being lit and people were beginning to stir. Eliza, he called, and she turned in surprise. Mr. Bennett, what are you doing here? He dismounted, leading his horse toward her, suddenly feeling foolish but pressing on anyway. I know this is going to sound insane. We have only just met, and you have no reason to trust me or believe anything I am about to say. What are you talking about? Eliza asked, confusion clear on her face. Cole took a deep breath. Do not go to San Antonio. Come with me instead, to my ranch. I know you plan to work as a seamstress for your aunt, but you could do that anywhere. You could do it in the town near my ranch, or you could even set up a shop there. The settlement is growing, and there is no one who does fine sewing for miles around. You would have all the business you could handle. Eliza stared at him. You cannot be serious. You are asking me to abandon my plans and ride off with a man I met an hour ago. That is madness. I know, Cole said. I know it is. But Eliza, I have not felt this way in years, maybe ever. When I talk to you, when I look at you, something in me recognizes something in you. I do not believe in fate or destiny or any of that, but I believe in taking chances when they present themselves. You said you wanted to feel alive again. Do not you think this qualifies? Eliza opened her mouth to refuse, to tell him he was being ridiculous, that she could not possibly do what he was suggesting. But the words would not come, because he was right. She did want to feel alive. And standing here, looking at this earnest, kind man who was offering her something unexpected and wild and completely impractical, she felt more alive than she had in months. I do not even know you, she said weakly. Then get to know me, Cole urged. Come with me for a week, just a week. Let me show you the ranch, the town, the life you could have. If after a week you want to continue on to San Antonio, I will take you there myself, but give this a chance, give us a chance. There is no us, Eliza protested. We are strangers. Are we, though? Cole asked quietly. Did this morning feel like talking to a stranger to you? Because it did not feel that way to me. Eliza bit her lip, torn between caution and desire, between the sensible plan she had made and this unexpected possibility that had appeared out of nowhere. She thought of her aunt in San Antonio, a woman she had met only twice in her life, who had offered shelter more out of obligation than affection. She thought of the life waiting for her there, working for someone else, building someone else's dreams. Then she thought of Cole's description of his ranch, of evenings watching the sunset over his own land, of the freedom to build something of her own choosing. She thought of how he had made her laugh, how he had understood her grief without judgment, how he had looked at her like she was someone worth knowing. "This is insane," she said again, but her resolve was weakening. "Yes," Cole agreed. "Completely insane, so what do you say?" Eliza looked back at the wagon train camp, at the life she had planned so carefully. Then she looked at Cole, at the hope and uncertainty mingled in his blue eyes, at the hand he was extending toward her. She took it. "1 week," she said firmly. "I will give you 1 week to convince me this is not the most foolish decision I have ever made." Cole's face broke into a grin so wide it made her heart skip. 1 week. That is all I need. She had to collect her belongings from the wagon, explain to Mr. Crawford that she would not be continuing on to San Antonio. The wagon master was not pleased, warned her about the dangers of trusting strange men, tried to convince her to reconsider. But Eliza had made her choice, and she was surprised by how certain she felt about it. Within an hour, her trunk was secured to Cole's packhorse, which he had retrieved from a camp he had made a mile back, and she was sitting in front of him on his mare, his arms around her as he held the reins, heading south toward a future she could not have imagined when she woke that morning. They rode through the heat of the day, stopping occasionally to rest the horses and drink from the canteens Cole carried. He pointed out landmarks as they traveled, teaching her to read the landscape the way he had learned over years of ranging across these plains. That rocky outcropping marked where a spring emerged during wet years. Those trees indicated a creek that ran year-round. The way the grass grew in patterns showed where buffalo had once carved trails that were now used by cattle and wild horses. Eliza listened, fascinated. She had grown up in a city where the landscape was buildings and streets, where nature was confined to parks and planned gardens. This wild, open country was both terrifying and exhilarating. The sky seemed impossibly vast, stretching from horizon to horizon without interruption, and the wind carried scents of sage and mesquite, and something indefinable that she thought might simply be the smell of freedom. As the afternoon waned, Cole turned the horses toward a line of trees that marked another creek. "We will camp here tonight," he said. "The ranch is still a day's ride away, and I do not want to push the horses too hard with the extra weight." Eliza had never camped outdoors before, had never slept anywhere except in a proper bed or occasionally on the wagon during the journey from St. Louis. She watched as Cole efficiently unsaddled the horses, hobbled them so they could graze but not wander far, and began gathering wood for a fire. "What can I do to help?" she asked, feeling useless. "Can you cook?" Cole asked. "I can," Eliza confirmed. "My father and I took care of ourselves after my mother died. I am no chef, but I can make a decent meal with the right ingredients," Cole grinned. "Then you are already more skilled than me. I can keep myself from starving, but no one would call what I make decent. I have bacon, beans, and coffee. There is also some cornbread that Miguel's wife made before I left. It is probably stale by now, but it is better than nothing." Eliza set to work, grateful for something to do with her hands. She sliced the bacon and set it to frying in Cole's battered skillet, then added the beans to warm. The cornbread was indeed stale, but she cut it into pieces and toasted them in the bacon grease, transforming them into something crispy and surprisingly good. They ate as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Cole had spread out his bedroll for Eliza, insisting he would sleep on a saddle blanket beside the fire. As darkness fell, the stars emerged one by one until the sky was a river of light overhead. "I have never seen so many stars," Eliza breathed, lying on her back and gazing up in wonder. Cole lay nearby, his hands behind his head, looking up as well. "When I first came out here, I used to spend hours just watching them. My mother taught me the constellations when I was young, but out here you can see so many more than you ever could back east." "Show me," Eliza said. So Cole pointed out the patterns, tracing Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, finding Cassiopeia and Orion. He told her the stories his mother had shared, Greek myths of heroes and monsters and gods who meddled in human affairs. His voice was deep and soothing, and Eliza found herself relaxing completely for the first time since her father's death, the tension she had been carrying in her shoulders finally releasing. "Cole," she said after he had finished a story about Perseus and Andromeda. "Yes." "Why did you really ask me to come with you? And please do not say it was just because we had a nice conversation. That cannot be the whole reason." Cole was quiet for a long moment. "Do you believe in moments that change everything?" he finally asked. "I am not sure I know what you mean." "I mean moments where everything that came before leads up to that instant and everything that comes after branches out from it. Where your whole life pivots on a single choice or encounter." Eliza thought about it. "I suppose so. My father's death was like that. It changed everything." "This morning was like that for me," Cole said quietly. "When I saw you in the river, it was not just that you were beautiful, though you are. It was not just that you were brave enough to swim alone at dawn, though that impressed me. It was that you looked the way I had been feeling for years without realizing it. Free, alive, unafraid. And when we talked, when you shared your grief and your dreams, I felt something click into place. Like I had been waiting without knowing what I was waiting for, and suddenly there you were." Eliza turned her head to look at him. In the firelight, his profile was strong and honest, and she felt that pull toward him again, that sense of recognition she had felt by the river. "I felt it too," she admitted. "I thought I was being foolish. I told myself I was just emotional, that I was making too much of a chance encounter." "Maybe we are both being foolish," Cole said, turning to meet her gaze. "Or maybe we are being brave. I am not sure there is much difference." They lay there looking at each other across the small space between the bedroll and the saddle blanket, and Eliza felt her heart pounding. She wanted him to kiss her, wanted to close the distance between them, but she also wanted to take this slowly, to let this strange and wonderful thing unfolding between them develop naturally. As if reading her thoughts, Cole smiled. "You should get some sleep. Tomorrow will be a long day of riding." "Will I get to meet Miguel and Carlos?" Eliza asked. "You will, and you will love them. Miguel has been with me since the beginning. He was working on a ranch nearby when I bought my land, and when that ranch went under, I hired him. Carlos was just 15 then, but he is 19 now and one of the best horsemen I have ever seen. His mother, Rosa, lives in town and does washing for some of the families there. She is the one who made the cornbread." "They sound like good people," Eliza said. "The best," Cole agreed. "They are the closest thing to family I have now." Eliza felt a pang of emotion at that. She understood what it meant to build a family from people who were not blood. Her father had done the same after her mother died, forming close friendships with other shopkeepers, with customers who became more than customers, with people who had shared their lives and their losses. She closed her eyes, listening to the crackle of the fire and the distant sounds of the horses cropping grass. She should have been frightened, alone in the wilderness with a man she barely knew. Instead, she felt safer than she had in months. She fell asleep with a smile on her face, dreaming of rivers and horses and a pair of kind blue eyes. The next day dawned clear and warm. Cole woke first and rekindled the fire, setting coffee on to boil. The rich smell woke Eliza and she sat up, momentarily disoriented. Then memory flooded back and she looked around to find Cole grinning at her. "Good morning," he said. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," Eliza admitted. "Though I think I may be sore from all that riding yesterday. I'm not used to spending so many hours on horseback." "We will take it easier today," Cole promised. "We should reach the ranch by late afternoon." They ate a quick breakfast of leftover beans and coffee, then broke camp and continued south. True to his word, Cole set a more leisurely pace and they stopped frequently to rest. He told her more about the ranch, about the wild mustangs he caught and trained, about the challenges of running a business in such remote country where supplies had to be hauled from town, and where a bad drought or harsh winter could wipe out a year's profits. "It sounds hard," Eliza said. "It is," Cole agreed. but it is also rewarding in a way nothing else has ever been. When I gentle a horse that everyone else said was too wild to train, when I see it responding to a light touch instead of a harsh hand, when I sell it to someone who will treat it well and know it will have a good life, that means something. You really care about them, Eliza observed. The horses, I mean. I do. They are honest creatures. They do not lie or cheat or betray. If you treat them with respect, they will give you everything they have. I admire that. As they talked, Eliza found herself increasingly drawn to Cole's worldview, to his fundamental decency and his respect for the animals he worked with. She had known men in scent. Louis, who saw horses as nothing more than tools, who used whips and spurs freely, who prided themselves on breaking a horse's spirit. Cole's approach was gentler but no less effective, and she respected him deeply for it. The sun was low in the western sky when they crested a rise and Cole pointed ahead. There, that is home. Eliza looked and saw a small valley stretched below them, a creek glittering silver as it wound through the grass. There was a modest house built of logs and adobe, a barn that looked sturdy and well-maintained, and a series of corrals where horses grazed peacefully. Smoke rose from the chimney of the house, suggesting someone was cooking dinner, and as they rode closer, Eliza saw a man emerge from the barn. Cole, the man called, waving. He was perhaps 50, weathered and wiry, with graying hair and a warm smile. We were starting to worry you had gotten yourself into trouble. No trouble, Miguel, Cole called back. Just a detour. I brought someone with me. Miguel's eyebrows rose as he took in Eliza sitting in front of Cole on the horse. So I see, Carlos, he called toward the house. Come out here. Cole has returned and he has company. A younger man emerged, tall and lean with his father's dark eyes and a curious expression. He looked from Cole to Eliza and back again, clearly wondering what was going on. Cole dismounted and helped Eliza down, then made introductions. Miguel, Carlos, this is Eliza Morgan. She will be staying with us for a while. Eliza, these are the two men I told you about. Pleased to meet you, Eliza said, extending her hand. Miguel shook it solemnly, his eyes kind. Welcome, Miss Morgan. It is not often we have visitors, especially such lovely ones. Carlos shook her hand as well, still looking confused. Are you a relative of Cole's, miss? No, Eliza said, suddenly unsure how to explain her presence. I am, well, I suppose I am a friend. Cole and I met a few days ago, and he invited me to visit the ranch. Miguel and Carlos exchanged glances, and Eliza could see them processing this highly unusual situation. But if they had questions or reservations, they kept them to themselves. Miguel simply nodded and said, Then you are very welcome here. Come inside. I have stew cooking and there is plenty for everyone. The house was small but comfortable, with a main room that served as kitchen and living area and two small bedrooms off to the side. It was clean and tidy, with simple furnishings and a few personal touches that suggested Cole had made this place a real home rather than just a shelter. There were books on a shelf by the fireplace, a rocking chair that looked handmade, and a faded quilt draped over the back of a rough-hewn couch. You will take my room, Cole said to Eliza. I will bunk with Miguel and Carlos in the barn loft. I cannot take your room, Eliza protested. You can and you will, Cole said firmly. It is not up for debate. They ate Miguel's excellent stew around the rough wooden table, and Eliza answered questions about where she was from and where she had been headed. She explained about her father's death, her plan to move to San Antonio, and Cole's unexpected invitation to visit the ranch instead. She did not mention the swimming or how they had really met, merely saying they had encountered each other by the river. Miguel seemed to understand there was more to the story than she was telling, but he did not press for details. Instead, he asked about her plans, whether she intended to settle in the area or continue on to San Antonio after her visit. I am not sure yet, Eliza said honestly. Cole mentioned there might be opportunities for a seamstress in the nearby town. If that proves true, I might consider staying, but I have not decided anything for certain. The town is called Clearwater, Carlos offered. It is about 8 miles west of here. There are maybe 200 people living there now and more arriving all the time. Ranchers, farmers, shopkeepers. It is growing. And there is definitely a need for a seamstress, Miguel added. The nearest one is in Fort Worth, which is a 2-day ride. Most of the women in Clearwater make their own clothes or do without. If you have real skill, you would have customers lining up. Eliza felt a flutter of excitement. I do have real skill. I have been sewing since I was a child, and by the time I was 16, I was making dresses for some of the wealthier women in St. Louis. I can work with any fabric, any pattern. Then you should talk to Mrs. Patterson, Miguel said. She runs the general store in Clearwater. She would know who in town might be interested in hiring you or helping you set up your own shop. They talked long into the evening, and Eliza found herself liking Miguel and Carlos immensely. They were good men, hardworking and honest, and they clearly respected Cole deeply. The affection between the three of them was obvious, and Eliza could see that Cole had not exaggerated when he called them family. Finally, when exhaustion began to creep over her, Cole showed her to his room. It was Spartan but clean, with a narrow bed covered by a beautiful quilt, a washstand with a pitcher and bowl, and a trunk at the foot of the bed for storage. I will bring your trunk in tomorrow, Cole said. For tonight, there are clean clothes in that chest if you need them. Help yourself to anything. Thank you, Eliza said, for everything, for bringing me here, for sharing your home, for being so kind, Cole smiled. Thank you for taking a chance on me, on this. I know it was not easy. He left then, closing the door softly behind him, and Eliza sat on the edge of the bed, looking around the small room. This was Cole's private space, the place he came at the end of long days, where he slept and dreamed and planned his future. She felt honored to be trusted with it, even temporarily. She washed using the water in the pitcher, then changed into a nightgown from her small bag. The bed was surprisingly comfortable, the quilt soft and warm, and she fell asleep almost instantly, lulled by the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch at night. The next few days passed in a blur of new experiences. Cole took her around the property, showing her the creek where he watered his horses, the pastures where they grazed, the barn where he kept his tack and equipment. He introduced her to the horses, each one by name, telling her their histories and personalities. There was Thunder, a gray stallion who had been born wild and still had a spark of defiance in his eyes. There was Daisy, a gentle mare who loved having her nose rubbed. There was Copper, a young gelding who followed Carlos around like a puppy. Eliza was fascinated by everything. She had never spent much time around horses, and she was surprised by how intelligent and individual they were. Cole taught her how to approach them, how to read their body language, how to offer treats from a flat palm. He showed her the process of breaking a green horse, which was nothing like the violent process the term suggested. Instead, it was a gradual building of trust, a series of small steps that led to the horse accepting a saddle, then a bit, then a rider. It is beautiful, Eliza said, watching Cole work with a young Mustang in the round pen. The way you communicate with them without words. They understand more than most people think, Cole said, never taking his eyes off the horse. You just have to learn their language. On the 4th day of her visit, Cole took her into Clearwater. The town was small but bustling, with a wide main street lined with buildings in various stages of completion. There was a general store, a blacksmith, a saloon, a church, and several houses scattered beyond the main business district. People looked curiously at Eliza as they rode through, and Cole doffed his hat to several who called greetings. They stopped at the general store, and Cole introduced Eliza to Mrs. Patterson, a formidable woman in her 50s with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Cole explained that Eliza was a skilled seamstress looking for work, and Mrs. Patterson's demeanor immediately warmed. Skilled, you say? Can you show me examples of your work? I do not have any samples with me, Eliza admitted, but I could make something to demonstrate my abilities. Do that, Mrs. Patterson said. Make a dress, something fashionable. If it is as good as you claim, I know at least a dozen women who would hire you immediately. Myself included. I have not had a new dress that fit properly in 3 years. Eliza's mind was already racing with ideas. I will need fabric and notions. Thread, buttons, perhaps some ribbon. I have all of that, Mrs. Patterson said, gesturing to the shelves behind her stocked with bolts of cloth and sewing supplies. Pick what you need and bring me the dress when it is finished. We will settle up then based on the quality of your work. They spent an hour selecting materials. Eliza chose a deep blue cotton that would complement Mrs. Patterson's coloring, along with matching thread, buttons, and a length of cream-colored lace for trim. Mrs. Patterson provided measurements, and they agreed Eliza would return in a week with the completed dress. As they left the store, Cole was grinning. That seemed to go well. It did, Eliza agreed, excitement bubbling through her. If Mrs. Patterson is pleased with the dress, word will spread. I could actually build a business here. Is that what you want? Cole asked quietly. To stay? Eliza looked at him, at the hope carefully hidden in his eyes, at the tension in his shoulders that suggested he was bracing for rejection. She thought about the past 4 days, about mornings spent watching the sunrise over the pastures, about afternoons learning to ride the gentle mare Cole had chosen for her, about evenings sitting on the porch while Miguel played guitar and Carlos told stories. She thought about the way Cole looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention, like she was something precious and unexpected. She thought about how she felt when she was with him, like she had finally found a place where she belonged. Yes, she said simply. I want to stay. Cole's face transformed, the careful control dropping away to reveal pure joy. Truly, truly, Eliza confirmed. But Cole, we need to talk about what this means, about what we are to each other. What do you want us to be? Cole asked. I do not know yet, Eliza admitted. I know I have feelings for you. I know being with you makes me happier than I have been in a very long time. But we have only known each other a few days. That is not long enough to make permanent decisions. Then we will take our time, Cole said. We will court properly. I will come calling at the ranch house and you will decide whether you want to see me. If things progress, we will see where it leads. No pressure, no expectations, just 2 people getting to know each other. Eliza smiled. That sounds perfect. They spent the rest of the day in town, and Cole introduced her to more of the residents. The minister, Reverend Thompson, was a kind man who welcomed her warmly. The school teacher, Miss Sarah Fletcher, was thrilled to meet another young woman near her own age and invited Eliza to tea the following week. The blacksmith, a giant of a man named Jack Groves, tipped his hat and said he hoped she would consider Clearwater her new home. By the time they rode back to the ranch, Eliza's head was spinning with names and faces and possibilities. She had never felt so welcomed anywhere, had never had a community embrace her so quickly. It was overwhelming and wonderful in equal measure. That evening after dinner, Cole asked if she would like to take a walk. They strolled down to the creek, the same one that ran through his property, and sat on a flat rock near the water's edge, listening to the soft burble of the current. I have been thinking, Cole said, about what you said earlier about taking our time. You are right that we should not rush into anything. But Eliza, I want you to know that what I feel for you is real. This is not some passing fancy or momentary attraction. I have never felt this way about anyone. Eliza's heart was pounding. I feel the same way. It frightens me a little how quickly this has happened, but I cannot deny it. Then let us be frightened together, Cole said, taking her hand. Let us take this one day at a time and see where it leads. Eliza squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses earned from years of hard work, feeling the strength and gentleness both present in his touch. One day at a time, she agreed. He leaned in slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted to, but she did not want to. When his lips met hers, it was soft and sweet and perfect, a kiss that promised more without demanding anything. When they parted, Eliza was breathless. That was my first kiss, she admitted shyly. Cole's eyes widened. Truly, I am honored to be your first. I was too busy caring for my father and helping run the store to think about courtship, Eliza explained. There were men who showed interest, but none that I wanted to encourage. I suppose I was waiting for someone who made me feel the way you do. How do I make you feel? Cole asked quietly. Safe, Eliza said, and excited, and like I can be completely myself without pretense or performance. You make me feel seen. Cole cupped her face gently. That is exactly how you make me feel. They kissed again, longer this time, and when they finally walked back to the house hand in hand, Eliza felt like she was floating. Miguel and Carlos were tactful enough to ask no questions, though the smiles they exchanged made it clear they had noticed the change between Eliza and Cole. The next week passed in a blur of activity. Eliza threw herself into making Mrs. Patterson's dress, working from dawn until her eyes grew tired at night. She had set up a temporary sewing area in Cole's room, spreading fabric across the bed and using the windowsill to organize her supplies. The dress was taking shape beautifully, the bodice fitted and elegant, the skirt full but not overly so, the lace trim adding a touch of sophistication. Between sewing sessions, she spent time with Cole, learning more about the ranch and about him. He taught her to ride properly, moving her from the gentle mare to a livelier horse that required more skill to manage. He showed her the account books where he tracked expenses and income, explaining the economics of horse ranching. He told her stories of his childhood in Missouri, of parents who had loved each other deeply and had taught him by example what a good marriage looked like. They were partners in everything, Cole said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. My father consulted my mother on every major decision, and she did the same with him. They respected each other's opinions, supported each other's dreams. That is what I want. Not a wife who will simply follow my lead, but a partner who will challenge me and inspire me and build a life with me. That is what I want too, Eliza said. I saw too many marriages in St. Louis where the wife was treated as little more than property. I swore I would never accept that for myself. You will never have to, Cole promised. Not with me. On the 7th day, Eliza finished the dress. She pressed it carefully, examining every seam and stitch to ensure it was perfect. The result was better than she had hoped, a garment that would have commanded top dollar in St. Louis and that she was confident would impress even the critical Mrs. Patterson. She and Cole rode into Clearwater the next morning, the dress carefully packed to avoid wrinkles. When Mrs. Patterson saw it, her eyes widened. "This is exquisite," she breathed, running her fingers over the fabric. "The workmanship is flawless. Miss Morgan, you are hired. No, better than hired. I want to help you open your own shop. There is a building next to mine that is sitting empty. The owner died last year and his widow moved back east. I have been looking for someone to take it over. If you can make dresses like this, you will have more business than you can handle." Eliza felt tears prick her eyes. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. Let me show you the building." It was small but perfect, with a front room that could serve as a shop and display area, and a back room with good light from large windows where she could work. There was even a small living space upstairs, though Mrs. Patterson warned it needed work. The rent would be minimal, Mrs. Patterson said. $10 a month, that includes the shop and the living quarters. I would rather have someone I trust in this building than let it sit empty and fall into disrepair. $10 a month was far less than Eliza had expected to pay. She looked at Cole, who was grinning broadly. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think it is perfect," Eliza said. "I will take it." She and Mrs. Patterson shook hands on the deal, and just like that, Eliza had a business. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. She spent her days cleaning and organizing the shop, hanging curtains, building shelves for fabric and supplies. She purchased a good sewing machine from a traveling salesman, a modern singer that would allow her to work much faster than sewing by hand. Cole helped whenever he could, hauling lumber for shelves, repairing the front steps, painting the walls a cheerful cream color that made the space feel bright and welcoming. Miguel and Carlos pitched in too, and even some of the townspeople stopped by to offer assistance. Sarah Fletcher donated a small table and 2 chairs for the front room. Reverend Thompson's wife, Helen, contributed a beautiful rug that tied the space together. Within a month, Eliza's dress shop was open for business. She had 3 orders before she even officially opened, and within 2 months, she had a waiting list. The women of Clearwater and the surrounding ranches were thrilled to have access to a skilled seamstress, and Eliza's reputation spread quickly. She fell into a comfortable routine. She lived above the shop during the week, working long hours to fill orders. On Sundays, she closed the shop and rode out to Cole's ranch, where they spent the day together. Sometimes they went on long rides across the plains. Sometimes they simply sat on the porch and talked. Sometimes they helped Miguel and Carlos with ranch work, mending fences or checking on the horses in the far pastures. Their relationship deepened gradually, naturally. There were more kisses, each one sweeter than the last. There were long conversations about everything and nothing. There were moments of comfortable silence when words were not needed. Cole courted her properly, bringing her flowers from the prairie, taking her to church socials in town, treating her with a respect and affection that made her love him more each day. Yes, love. Because that was what this was. Eliza knew it with a certainty that went bone deep. She loved Cole Bennett, loved his kindness and his integrity, loved the way he treated everyone with dignity regardless of their station, loved the way he looked at her like she was the most important person in his world. On a cool evening in late October, 6 months after they had first met, Cole took her to their spot by the creek. The cottonwood trees had turned gold, and the setting sun painted everything in warm, amber light. They sat on their rock, and Cole took her hand. "Eliza Morgan, I know we have not been courting that long by most standards, but when you know, you know. You are my best friend, my favorite person, the one I want to see first thing in the morning and last thing at night. You make me laugh, you challenge me to be better. You have built something amazing here in Clearwater, and I am so proud of you. I love you more than I have words to express. Will you marry me?" Eliza felt tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. "Yes. Yes, of course I will marry you." Cole pulled a ring from his pocket, a simple gold band with a small sapphire set in the center. "It was my grandmother's. My mother gave it to me before she died and told me to give it to the woman who stole my heart. I think she would have loved you." "I wish I could have met her," Eliza said as Cole slipped the ring onto her finger. "It fit perfectly." "She would have loved how you are not afraid of anything," Cole said. "How you dove into that river at dawn, how you took a chance on a strange cowboy, how you built a successful business in a town where you knew no one. You are the bravest person I know." They kissed as the sun set, and when they rode back to tell Miguel and Carlos the news, both men whooped with joy. Miguel produced a bottle of wine he had been saving for a special occasion, and they toasted the engagement late into the night. The wedding was planned for Christmas Day, which gave Eliza 2 months to prepare. She made her own dress, of course, a beautiful creation of cream-colored silk with delicate embroidery at the bodice and sleeves. She also made a shirt for Cole from fine linen, embroidering his initials on the cuff in thread that matched his eyes. Sarah Fletcher agreed to stand up with her, and Miguel would stand with Cole. The whole town was invited, and Reverend Thompson was honored to perform the ceremony. The church was decorated with pine branches and candles, and when Eliza walked down the aisle on Christmas morning, she felt like she was living in a dream. Cole looked impossibly handsome in his new shirt and his best suit, tears shining in his eyes as he watched her approach. When they exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives, there was not a dry eye in the church. The reception was held at the ranch, with food and music and dancing that lasted until well after dark. Eliza danced with Cole, with Miguel, with Carlos, with half the men in Clearwater. She laughed until her sides hurt, ate cake until she felt like she might burst, and accepted congratulations and well wishes from what felt like 100 different people. Finally, as the party wound down and the guests began to depart, Cole swept her up in his arms and carried her into the house they would now share. He set her down gently in what had been his room and was now their room, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart swell. "I love you, Mrs. Bennet," he said softly. "I love you too, Mr. Bennet," she replied. Their wedding night was sweet and gentle, a coming together of two people who loved each other deeply. Cole was patient and kind, making sure Eliza felt safe and cherished. When they finally fell asleep in each other's arms, Eliza felt a completeness she had never known before. The next months were blissful. Eliza continued to run her shop, but now she spent her evenings and nights at the ranch with Cole. They fell into an easy partnership, supporting each other's work and dreams. Cole helped her with bookkeeping for the shop, and she helped him with correspondence and orders for the ranch. They made decisions together, talked through problems together, celebrated successes together. In the spring, Eliza discovered she was pregnant. She told Cole one evening after dinner, watching nervously for his reaction. His face lit up with such joy that her fears melted away. "We are going to have a baby," he breathed. "We are," Eliza confirmed. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing, then set her down carefully as if she were made of glass. "I am going to be a father. We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Eliza asked, though she could see the answer on his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Cole said. "You have given me everything I ever wanted and more than I dared to dream." The pregnancy was not easy. Eliza suffered from terrible morning sickness for the first few months, and as she grew larger, she found the physical demands of sewing increasingly difficult. But she was determined to keep working as long as possible, and with Sarah's help managing the shop, she was able to do so well into her 7th month. On a warm day in November, almost exactly a year and a half after she and Cole had first met by the river, Eliza went into labor. The birth was long and difficult, attended by the town's midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Greer. Cole paced outside the bedroom, wearing a path in the floor, while Miguel and Carlos tried to distract him with conversation and whiskey. Finally, just after dawn, the baby's first cry split the air. Mrs. Greer emerged from the bedroom with a smile. "You have a son, Mr. Bennet. A healthy, strong boy." Cole burst into the room to find Eliza propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. He approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at his son for the first time. The baby had a shock of dark hair and tiny fists that waved in the air. His eyes, when they opened, were a deep blue like his father's. "He is perfect," Cole breathed. "He is," Eliza agreed. "Would you like to hold him?" Cole took the baby carefully, cradling him against his chest, and Eliza watched tears stream down her husband's face. "Thank you," Cole said, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for this gift, for him, for you, for the life we have built together. Thank you for taking a chance on a woman swimming in a river," Eliza said with a tired smile. They named the baby James, after Cole's father, with Morgan as his middle name to honor Eliza's maiden name and her own father. Little James was a good baby, healthy and strong, and he brought immeasurable joy to the ranch. Miguel and Carlos doted on him, and Rosa declared him the most beautiful baby she had ever seen. Eliza closed her shop for 3 months to focus on motherhood, but with Sarah's help, she was able to reopen part-time when James was old enough. She found she could balance both roles, seamstress and mother, especially with Cole's support. He was a devoted father, changing diapers without complaint, walking the floor with James when he was fussy, singing lullabies in a surprisingly good voice. Life settled into a new rhythm. The ranch prospered, with Cole's reputation for producing well-trained horses growing each year. Eliza's shop became known throughout the county, and she had to turn away work because she could not keep up with demand. They talked about hiring an apprentice, someone Eliza could train to help with the simpler tasks. When James was 2, Eliza discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1879 she gave birth to a daughter they named Emma Rose. Emma had her mother's auburn hair and green eyes, and from the moment she was born, she had her father wrapped around her tiny finger. The house that had once seemed adequately sized now felt cramped with 2 children, so Cole and Miguel began building an addition. They worked on it in the evenings and on Sundays, and by the time Emma was walking, there were 2 new bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Life was not without challenges. There were droughts that killed the grass and forced them to sell off horses they had planned to train. There were injuries, including a time when Carlos was thrown from a particularly spirited stallion and broke his arm. There were illnesses, childhood fevers that terrified Eliza until they broke, colds that lingered, a bout of pneumonia that nearly claimed Miguel before he finally recovered. But through it all, Cole and Eliza faced everything together. Their love deepened with each passing year, maturing from the passionate intensity of new romance into something stronger and more enduring. They still kissed every morning and every night. They still held hands while sitting on the porch. They still found moments to be alone, to reconnect as husband and wife rather than just parents and business partners. When James was 7 and Emma was 5, Eliza sat Cole down one evening and told him she wanted to expand the shop into a proper dress store, one that sold ready-made clothing as well as custom work. She had saved money from her earnings over the years, and she believed Clearwater was big enough now to support such a venture. Cole listened to her plans, asked thoughtful questions, and then said simply, "I believe in you. If this is what you want, we will make it happen." With his support and her savings, Eliza purchased the building next to her original shop and knocked through the wall to create one large space. She hired 2 seamstresses to help with production, young women she trained in her techniques. She ordered fabric in bulk from suppliers in Fort Worth and even from St. Louis. She created a line of simple but elegant dresses that could be purchased off the rack or altered to fit. The expansion was a huge success. Within a year, Eliza's Dress Emporium was the most successful business in Clearwater, and women came from ranches 30 miles away to shop there. Eliza hired a manager to handle day-to-day operations, freeing her to focus on design and custom work for special occasions. Cole's ranch expanded as well. He purchased another 100 acres when the neighboring property came up for sale, and he hired 2 more hands to help with the increased workload. He began breeding his own horses rather than relying entirely on catching wild mustangs, developing a line known for intelligence and stamina. By 1885, 10 years after they had first met by the river, Cole and Eliza Bennett were among the most respected citizens of Clearwater. They had built successful businesses, raised 2 wonderful children, and created a life that was everything they had dreamed of and more. One morning in June, Eliza woke before dawn with a strange pull to visit the river. She slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake Cole, and dressed quickly. She left a note on the kitchen table in case anyone woke before she returned, then saddled her mare and rode north toward the Red River. She had not been back to the spot where she and Cole had first met since that fateful morning so long ago, but she found her way there easily, guided by memory and instinct. The cottonwood trees looked the same, perhaps a bit taller. The river still shimmered in the dawn light like liquid silver. On impulse, Eliza dismounted and removed her boots and stockings. She waded into the shallows, gasping at the cold just as she had that first time. The water swirled around her ankles, her calves, and she closed her eyes, remembering the woman she had been then. Lost, grieving. Searching for something she could not name. "I thought I might find you here," a voice said from the shore, and Eliza's eyes flew open to find Cole standing there, watching her with the same expression he had worn that first morning. A mixture of wonder and admiration and something deeper that she now recognized as love. "How did you find me?" she asked. "I woke up and you were gone. I saw your note and I just knew where you would be." He began removing his own boots. "May I join you?" Eliza laughed, remembering asking him that same question a decade ago. "Please do." Cole waded in, still fully dressed, and pulled her into his arms. They stood there in the shallows as the sun rose, holding each other, and Eliza felt a sense of perfect contentment. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked quietly. "Taking a chance on me, giving up your plans for San Antonio." "Never," Eliza said firmly. "Not for a single moment. You gave me everything I did not even know I needed. A home, a family, a purpose, and a love greater than I ever imagined possible." "You did the same for me," Cole said. "I was just going through the motions before I met you, building the ranch because it was what I had always planned to do but not really living. You taught me what it means to truly be alive." They kissed there in the river as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. And when they finally walked back to shore hand in hand, Eliza knew that this moment, like the first time they had met here, would be one she remembered for the rest of her life. They returned to the ranch to find James and Emma awake and wondering where their parents had gone. Cole explained they had taken a ride to a special place, and Emma immediately demanded to know if she could go next time. "When you are a bit older," Eliza promised. "It is a place your father and I like to visit sometimes, to remember how we met." "Tell us the story again," James pleaded, and even though they had heard it dozens of times, Cole and Eliza settled in to recount the tale of the cowboy and the woman swimming in the river at dawn. Over the years that followed, life continued to bless the Bennett family. James grew into a fine young man with his father's love of horses and his mother's head for business. He began working full-time on the ranch at 15, and by the time he was 20, he was managing much of the daily operation. Emma proved to have her mother's talent for design and her father's determination. She began helping in the dress shop at 12, and by 16, she was creating her own original designs that customers loved. Eliza knew that one day Emma would take over the business, and the thought filled her with pride. In 1892, when Eliza was 39 and Cole was 45, they welcomed an unexpected surprise. Eliza had thought her childbearing years were behind her, but that spring she discovered she was pregnant again. Their youngest child, a boy they named Samuel after Cole's grandfather, was born in December. Samuel's arrival brought a renewed sense of joy to the household. James and Emma adored their baby brother, and Miguel, now in his late 60s but still spry, declared that Samuel would certainly be the finest horseman of them all. The late 1800s brought changes to Texas and to Clearwater. The railroad reached the area in 1894, making it easier to ship goods and bringing more settlers. Clearwater grew from a small frontier town into a proper community with a school, a hospital, and multiple churches. The wild, dangerous days of the early frontier faded into memory, replaced by a more settled, civilized era. Through it all, Cole and Eliza remained the heart of the community. They served on town councils, supported the church, helped neighbors in need, and raised their children to value hard work, integrity, and kindness. Their marriage remained strong, built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared dreams, and a love that had only grown deeper with time. On their 20th anniversary, Cole took Eliza back to the river once more. They were older now, with gray threads in their hair and lines on their faces earned from years of laughter and hard work. But when Cole looked at Eliza, he still saw the brave woman who had been swimming at dawn, and when Eliza looked at Cole, she still saw the kind cowboy who had offered her a new life. 20 years, Cole marveled. It seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. Best 20 years of my life, Eliza said, leaning against his shoulder. Mine too, Cole agreed, and with luck we will have 20 more. They did have more years, blessed years full of grandchildren and continued success. James married a rancher's daughter named Catherine, and they gave Cole and Eliza 3 grandsons. Emma married a lawyer from Fort Worth, and they had 2 daughters who showed promise of inheriting their grandmother's talent for sewing. Samuel, the baby of the family, grew up with a love for books and learning that surprised everyone. At 18, he announced he wanted to attend university to study veterinary medicine, wanting to combine his family's love of horses with modern scientific knowledge. Cole and Eliza supported his dream wholeheartedly, proud that their youngest was forging his own path. As the new century dawned in 1900, Cole and Eliza Bennett looked back on 25 years of marriage with profound gratitude. They had built a legacy that extended far beyond their successful businesses. They had raised good, decent children who were making their own marks on the world. They had created a home filled with love and laughter. They had shown everyone who knew them what a true partnership looked like. But more than any of that, they had found in each other exactly what they had been searching for that morning by the river so long ago. Cole had found someone to share his life with, someone who challenged and inspired him, someone who made the isolated ranch house feel like a home. Eliza had found someone who saw her for who she truly was, someone who supported her dreams and celebrated her successes, someone who loved her completely and without reservation. On warm summer evenings, they still sat on the porch and watched the sunset, hands intertwined. They still told their children and grandchildren the story of how they met, of the woman who was brave enough to swim alone at dawn and the cowboy who was brave enough to join her. They still visited the river sometimes, standing in the shallows and remembering the moment that changed both of their lives forever. In 1905, when they celebrated their 30th anniversary, the whole town of Clearwater turned out for a party in their honor. There were speeches praising their contributions to the community, toasts to their enduring love, and enough food to feed an army. James and Emma presented them with a beautiful photograph album filled with pictures documenting their life together. And Samuel, home from veterinary school, gave a touching speech about what his parents had taught him about love and commitment. As the party wound down and the guests departed, Cole and Eliza found themselves alone on their porch once more, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. 30 years, Eliza said softly. When I waded into that river at dawn, I was looking for a moment of peace, a brief escape from grief. I never imagined I would find this. Neither did I, Cole admitted. I thought I was just watering my horse. Instead, I found my whole future. No regrets, Eliza asked, the same question Cole had posed to her at the river years before. Not a single one, Cole said firmly. Every choice, every challenge, every moment of joy and sorrow, all of it led us here. How could I regret any of it? Eliza rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid strength of the man who had been her partner for 3 decades. I love you, Cole Bennett. I love you too, Eliza Bennett. I always will. They sat there as darkness fell completely and the stars blazed overhead. 2 people who had taken a chance on each other in the wild early days of Texas and had built something beautiful that would endure long after they were gone. Their love story had begun with a simple act of courage, a woman swimming alone at dawn and a cowboy who chose to join her, and it had grown into something that touched countless lives and left a lasting mark on their corner of the world. The years continued to pass, as they always do. Cole and Eliza grew older, but never stopped loving each other with the same intensity they had felt from the beginning. They celebrated the births of more grandchildren, mourned the loss of old friends including Miguel, who passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 79, and continued to be active in their community even as they gradually handed over more responsibilities to their children. In 1910, on a beautiful June morning much like the one when they had first met, Cole woke to find Eliza standing at the window of their bedroom, looking out at the sunrise. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "About how blessed we have been," Eliza said. "About how that one morning changed everything. About how grateful I am that you were brave enough to ask me to stay." "I am grateful you were brave enough to say yes," Cole replied, wrapping his arms around her from behind. They stood there watching the sun rise over the ranch they had built together, the home they had filled with love and family. the life they had created through hard work, determination, and unwavering support for each other. It was a good life, a beautiful life, and as Eliza leaned back against Cole's solid presence, she knew with absolute certainty that she would not change a single moment of it. Their story, which had begun with a chance encounter by a river in the wild Texas frontier of 1875, had become a legend in Clearwater. People spoke of Cole and Eliza Bennett with admiration and affection, pointing to them as an example of what love and partnership could be. Their children carried on their values and their businesses, ensuring that the legacy they had built would continue for generations. And sometimes, on quiet mornings when the light was just right, you could see an older couple making their way down to the creek that ran through their property. They would stand in the shallows, holding hands, remembering the young people they had been and marveling at the life they had built together. The cowboy and the woman who had been swimming alone at dawn now joined together forever in a love that had withstood every test and grown stronger with each passing year. It was a love story for the ages, born in the Wild West but transcending time and place. A story of courage and chance, of two lonely hearts finding each other against all odds, of building something lasting in an uncertain world. And though Cole and Eliza's time on Earth would eventually come to an end, their story would live on, passed down through their children and grandchildren, a reminder that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a single brave choice, and that true love, once found, can weather any storm and last a lifetime. They lived out their days surrounded by family and love, active and engaged until the very end. When Cole passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1920 at the age of 73, he did so knowing he had lived a full and meaningful life. Eliza mourned him deeply, but found comfort in their children and grandchildren, in the community they had helped build, and in the memories of 45 years of marriage that had been everything she could have hoped for and more. She lived another 5 years, remaining sharp and engaged until the end, still involved in the dress shop that had grown into a regional business, still telling stories of the old days to anyone who would listen. When she passed away quietly in 1925 at the age of 72, surrounded by 3 generations of family, her last words were about Cole and the morning they had met by the river. They were buried side by side in the Clearwater Cemetery under a shared headstone that reads simply, Cole and Eliza Bennett, together in life and in death. Their love story began at dawn by a river and it will never end. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through James to his sons. The dress shop continued under Emma's management and later under her daughters. Samuel became a renowned veterinarian whose innovations in equine care were adopted throughout Texas. Each of the Bennett children and grandchildren carried forward the values Cole and Eliza had instilled, building lives of purpose and meaning, treating others with respect and kindness, and cherishing their families above all else. And sometimes, on summer mornings when the light hits the Red River just right, locals swear you can see the ghosts of a young woman and a cowboy standing in the shallows, holding hands and laughing together. It is just a trick of the light, of course, a romantic fancy. But then again, maybe it is something more. Maybe it is a reminder that true love never really dies, that the bonds we forge in life can transcend death itself, and that the story of 2 brave souls who took a chance on each other by a river at dawn will live on forever in the hearts of those who believe in the power of love. Their legacy extended far beyond their immediate family. The Bennett Ranch became known throughout Texas for producing the finest horses, animals trained with patience and respect rather than force. Eliza's dress emporium grew into a chain of stores across the state, each one maintaining the quality and attention to detail that had been her trademark. The Bennett name became synonymous with integrity, hard work, and family values. But perhaps their greatest legacy was the example they set for what marriage could be. In an era when women were often treated as property and marriages were frequently arrangements of convenience rather than love, Cole and Eliza had shown another way. They had been true partners, supporting each other's dreams, making decisions together, and maintaining romance and passion throughout decades of marriage. They had proved that love born of genuine connection and mutual respect could last a lifetime and grow stronger rather than fading with time. Their story was told and retold, becoming part of the folklore of Clearwater and the surrounding region. It was a story that gave hope to young couples starting out, that reminded older couples why they had fallen in love in the first place, that showed everyone who heard it that true love was not just a fairy tale, but something real and attainable if you were brave enough to reach for it. The morning Cole saw Eliza swimming in the river at dawn had been a turning point not just for two individuals, but for an entire community. The life they built together, the family they raised, the businesses they created, and the example they set had rippled outward in ways neither of them could have imagined when they first met. They had taken a chance on each other when logic and caution said they should not, and in doing so, they had created something beautiful and lasting that would touch lives for generations to come. And so their story ends where it began, with a river at dawn and two brave souls willing to take a chance on love. It is a story without regrets, without what-ifs, a story of a life fully lived and a love fully realized. Cole Bennett, the cowboy who watched from the shore before he joined her. Eliza Morgan Bennett, the woman who was swimming alone and found she no longer had to be. Together they built a legacy of love that would endure long after they were gone. A testament to the power of courage, connection, and the magic that can happen when two hearts recognize in each other what they have been searching for all along. Their love story was complete, a perfect circle from that first meeting to their final days together. It was a story that proved love at first sight could be real and lasting. It was a story that showed how two strangers could become soulmates. It was a story that demonstrated the extraordinary life that could be built from a single moment of bravery. And it was a story that would be remembered and cherished by all who heard it, a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come when we are brave enough to dive in, to take risks, to say yes to unexpected possibilities. The sun rose over the Texas plains, just as it had on that morning in 1875 when everything changed. The river flowed on, carrying with it the memories of two people who had loved each other completely and built a beautiful life together. And somewhere in the collective memory of Clearwater, the story lived on, passed from grandparent to grandchild, a tale of love and courage that would never be forgotten. Cole and Eliza Bennett had lived fully, loved deeply, and left behind a legacy that went far beyond material success. They had shown everyone who knew them what it meant to build a life of purpose and meaning, to face challenges with courage and grace, and to love each other with unwavering devotion through all the years of their marriage. Their story was complete, their circle closed, their love eternal. And that, after all, was the happiest ending anyone could hope for.